Real Progressives. Rocco Million with Real Progressives. Supposed to do a show with Harsh Med, the Harsh Reality, but for some reason his service keeps breaking up and freezing. So we are going to try to get him on to my show, and I'm going to host with Real Progressive. Let me see if I can add him in. Yeah, sometimes the sound goes bad. It'll go off and on. There's nothing really I could do about it on my side. So we're just bear with me. Can anybody hear me right now? If you can't hear me, try to log off and I'm log right back on. I just invited, there's Harsh again. Did you get my invite, Harsh? Boy, this is a really hard thing. We're trying double time to bring this interview to you guys today. We've been trying since 3 o'clock today, 2:30. Yeah, damn. Well, I don't know. All we could do is keep trying there. See if Harsh could figured out how to join the show with me. I invited him. Yeah, don't share it until it works. Good job. Oh, brother. Well, I don't know if this is going to work today or not. Does anybody have any topics that they want to discuss? Things happening in the media? Things going on in the world? Does anybody want to talk? What's up, Harsh? Are you having trouble? You can't get in? I don't see the place to join. I don't see how to get you onto the show other than just inviting you. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, here we go. Okay. Harsh, try to log back in now. The tab was off for letting people come on. You should have a button now to join. And if anybody else wants to join or talk, if anybody else has good topics to talk about, go ahead and jot them down and we will discuss. Yeah, Harsh, I just, yeah, the bomb's going off in Austin. That's a good one. Okay, hold on 1 second. There we go. Approve. All right, Harsh, I just added you in. You should be getting the approval thing. Once you hit approve, then you should join us. Yeah, the new CIA director. Yeah, definitely. She has war crimes pending in all types of different nations. That's pretty crazy. And Democrats are thinking it's a good thing that we have a woman CIA director, regardless that that woman destroyed evidence of torture, but it's the same. Yeah, it's the same old, same old. And what was the other one again? The bombs in Austin. Well, at least that guy's dead. No more people will be terrorized in Austin from that guy. That's one good thing. And that, yeah, that girl. Wait, hold on one second. I don't know. Harsh, didn't you get in? Let me see if I can do this again. Add. It says no answer from my video guest. The proof, go look it up. It's very well documented. What, the proof with the CIA director? Yeah, it's not a secret. Obama declined to prosecute her. And his reasoning was we weren't to live in the past. He said, we got to move on and not look to live in the past. Well, because of that, now, she's free to go ahead and be the director of the CIA, and she could still do all this horrible stuff. All right, he just sent me a request. I approved it. And I don't know. Oh, yeah. Well, the bomber did it proof. Well, I don't know. I don't have that proof. But either way, who do you think did it? You think it's a conspiracy? Linda, do you think that our government is going around bombing American citizens as a false flag? Because that's pretty offensive. We do false flags, but there's a lot easier ways to distract the public instead of killing American citizens. I don't understand this, why I can't get Harsh on here. Yeah, the same exact reason. Not prosecuting W and Cheney, exactly. And it's ridiculous. It's not even so much about anything else. It's just about we need to see the law applied, fairly across the board, regardless of the consequences. It's the same thing with Hillary Clinton. When I see one of my Navy shipmates go to Leavenworth for taking a picture on a nuclear submarine so that he had pictures to show his kid, I'm sure they didn't ask him what his motives were or, anything else. Intent had nothing to do with it. But all of a sudden for Hillary Clinton, all of a sudden the rules change. And all of a sudden, we see there's a two-tier justice system in America. 99% we have one justice system, and then the 1% they have their own. And they're pretty much immune to the laws of the land. And that's unacceptable. I don't care if you're a Democrat, Republican, or a Martian. That's unacceptable. So, I don't know. We can't get Harsh on here. I'm trying to invite him. I don't see why I can't get on. It's so stupid, this freaking thing. Nuclear, please, Rocket, don't pronounce. Well, I can't help how I pronounce it. Some of the things I just, it's just my enunciation. But that's the other thing, talking about North Korea. Everybody thinks that for some reason, we have the right to go around telling people that they have to disarm and they can't be a nuclear power. It's just insanity. If I was Kim Jong-il or whatever his name is, if I was the leader in North Korea and I looked around America or I looked around the U.S., the whole world, and I seen every nation that doesn't have nukes, be toppled by America or be terrorized by America, you're damn well, you better be sure I would want nukes to protect my people. I mean, it's just common sense. How could we ask other nations in the world to disarm nuclear, to get rid of their nukes when we're gearing up? We're creating new nuclear weapons. We're creating tactical nukes. We're adding to our nuclear arsenal. And at the same time, we think we can ask others to get rid of theirs. I mean, sometimes it just amazes me what people in America think. And the amount of narcissism and the amount of cognitive dissonance that we have in this country. I mean, it's crazy. I don't know why. I see Harsh's picture there, but I can't get him in. I'm getting really mad with this stuff. Yes, I served in the Navy, 2001 to 2004. I'm a disabled vet, had multiple spinal surgeries. I wasn't in war, though. I loved the Navy. It was, for me, it was fun, a lot of fun. But nuclear. Nuclear. I don't know, Allison. You're welcome. Thank you for thanking me. But the whole thing is with the military is, we have for-profit imperialism. America's the biggest terrorist state in the world, bar none. Bigger than China, North Korea, Russia, and Iran all put together. And that's no exaggeration. And I don't say that lightly. And I don't take pleasure in that fact. That's horrible. But we have, not admitting the truth doesn't make it not true. So if we don't like something, we have to confront it. And we have to clearly call it out, and we have to work to change it. Ignoring problems isn't going to help. Calling mean names for, talking about a problem isn't going to help. I didn't make that the truth. It just is the truth. Don't hate truth tellers. Hate the truth and work to change it. It's not really that difficult. This is all basic logic. How would you want to be treated? What would you like, if you were in the other shoes? You got to look at things from all different perspectives. It's not really, this isn't complex, and it's the same way for the economy, and for economic problems. Every problem in our society has its roots in economics, and it has its macroeconomic solutions. You want to talk about gun violence? The roots are in economics. You want to talk about drug addiction? The roots are in economics. Whatever you want to talk about, racism, the roots are in economics. The solutions are in macroeconomics. It's that simple. Our government is constitutionally mandated to mint and tax to provide for the general welfare of society. So that means that our government doesn't need profit. It doesn't need revenue. Our government needs real resources like infrastructure, like sanitation systems, legal systems, military, things like that. It needs those real resources to satisfy its constitutional mandate to the general welfare. So it's real simple. Our government uses taxation to create unemployment so that it can provision society with real resources using paid employment. That's it. It's just a social construct. It's just a means of production. Dollars are a law to satisfy tax. We can't run out of laws, so we can never run out of dollars. It's it. That's it. It's not complex. Every dollar spent into existence is the debt of government. It's promising to accept it back to extinguish our tax obligations. That same dollar is our asset in the private sector, in the non-government, because it extinguishes our tax obligations. So that means the government's debt is our asset in the non-government. So government debt is never a burden. Okay? The national debt is just a record of all dollars in existence. If our national debt was zero, we would have $0 in existence. Okay, so the real national debt isn't numbers on a scorecard or numbers on a clock in Times Square. The real debt is the lack of investment we make into society, the lack of green, sustainable energy, the lack of top-notch education and top-notch healthcare for our people. Because like Greenspan told Paul Ryan was talking about, Social Security being, unsustainable, and he wanted to privatize it. And Greenspan told him straight out, there's nothing unsustainable about it. Government can always create money and pay it to somebody. The money part of the equation doesn't matter. That's always infinite. All that matters is we have the real resources available to buy with that money. So the main thing is we have to maintain our productive capability, our productive capacity. So that means government, because it's charged with the general welfare, nobody else. So government has to invest in society. Government has to invest in our education. Government has to invest in our infrastructure. Government has to invest in, green, sustainable energy and all that. Because if we don't invest in our productive capability, then we really could, end up like Zimbabwe or Weimar Germany, because that's the thing. It's our productive capacity that matters. It's the real resources that constrain us, not money. We always have the same exact spending capacity, infinite. And that's regardless of revenues, federal revenues, regardless of the exchange rate, regardless of the markets, foreign or domestic. Government can always buy anything for sale in dollars. It makes the dollars at will by congressional decree. That's the whole point. That's the whole point. This is why it does that. That's why it's constitutionally mandated to create, to tax and to mint and tax to provide for the general welfare. Because government uses taxation to create the unemployment so that it could provision society with real resources using paid employment. That's it. So you guys can keep on just, putting down topics to discuss, because I don't think Harsh said that he can't get a signal to join in. So I guess it's just going to be me solo, and I don't have anything. I don't have a show planned out, so I'm going to have to just go off the cuff and talk about whatever you are putting down there in the comments. So that's when we talk about gun violence. I know that everybody wants to think about banning assault rifles and all that. But the thing we got to remember... No, my finger isn't on the mic. When we talk about banning assault rifles, we got to remember, feel-good policy isn't going to help us. We can destroy every single gun in society. That ain't going to stop the systemic factors radicalizing so many people in the first place. The whole thing is we shouldn't be focusing on the tools that people use to go nuts with. We should be focusing on why so many people are going nuts to begin with. So, we should use the outrage about gun violence to our advantage. Finally, we see that, there's a lot of people that are becoming involved. They want to get involved in the political conversation. So we need to use that outrage. We need to use that people power to fight the systemic factors that are causing the gun violence, the violence to begin with. And just banning assault rifles does nothing to stop the bloodshed. So we could parlay all that public outrage, parlay all that public support into, an assault rifle ban tied to a federally guaranteed living wage job for every person who wants one. That is the only way you affect the systemic abuses that are radicalizing so many people to begin with. People may say, well, kids don't have jobs anyway, so what's this got to do with them? Well, the fact is, kids don't have jobs, but they're still affected by artificial scarcity. This didn't start happening until the neoliberal period, the end stage of capitalism. Our government cuts the social safety net. We cut public spending on things like mental health, on things like education. All right. We inflict economic terror by targeting unemployment. That's systemic intentional poverty. We inflict police terror by criminalizing nature and peaceful behavior. Cops legally rape, rob, and kill people over evil flowers, all in the name of corporate profits. All of this stuff teaches our kids from birth to put profit over people in society. Then we drug our kids with for-profit medicines like Adderall. That's basically cocaine. Okay, so, it's easy to understand why under these conditions, so many people grow up with a disregard for human life. Or why under these conditions, so many people grow up indifferent to human suffering. This is a fact, So simply outlawing guns, even destroying every single gun in existence, does nothing to stop that bloodshed. Radicalized people will simply use a different tool. Would it really be better if instead of school shootings, we were dealing with school bombings? I don't think so. Because really, fertilizers in cars will still be legal. Poisons will still be legal. If people are radicalized to the point where they want to kill, they're going to find ways to kill. The tool is unimportant. All right. So we have to address the issues that radicalize people to begin with. And that means we have to stop inflicting economic and police terror on society. We have to stop cutting the social safety net. We have to stop teaching our kids to put profit over people in society. It's real simple. You beat a dog and feed it gunpowder every day. That dog is going to be crazy. And it's not the dog's fault. It's the systemic factors that made the dog crazy. It's the systemic factors that dog had to live under that made it crazy. So, we got to be real careful with these feel-good policy prescriptions, that we see on the mainstream media. And that's what Real Progressives is here for. We're here to look at things from a different perspective. We're here to attack the root problems and talk about root solutions. So, yeah. And it's the same with drugs too. We should be legalizing all vice for the general welfare of society. Because the black market doesn't care about addiction. The black market doesn't care about kids. The black market doesn't care about the general welfare of society. That's government's job. That's why we empower a government to sit in authority over all. All right? Making drugs illegal does nothing to stop addiction. All right? If anything, it makes the problem worse. How do you control something by pushing it in the back alleys? Onto the black market. That's less control. If our government controls people's drug supply, it sounds scary, but they'd have a lot more control over drug addicts. If people got to go in and get their drugs from a clinic, if addicts got to go in and get their drugs from a clinic, the government's going to have a lot more control over those addicts. Those addicts ain't going to be in the streets leaving dirty needles everywhere. They're not going to be robbing your community, and there's going to be resources available for these people to get clean. Nobody wants to be an addict, believe me. All right, but we have for-profit rehabs that don't treat the issues. They're about getting profit. They give you more drugs when you go to rehab. I actually got kicked out of rehab because I refused Suboxone. All right, because I wanted to be dope sick while I was in rehab. Common sense. If you're going to be dope sick, Wouldn't it be better to be dope sick inside of a rehab where they cook for you, they clean for you, they do everything for you? Why would I want to be taking drugs to keep me from being sick in rehab? And then by the time I get home, then I just start going through physical withdrawal by myself. That's a recipe for disaster. It makes no sense. It's all about profit. So, there are things we could be doing, on a government level to deal with addiction, to deal with guns, to deal with all of our problems, systemic racism, you name it. There's the number one policy that anybody can advocate for is a federally guaranteed living wage job program. This destroys the existing exploitive capitalist power structures in society. This empowers the average person against the predatory nature of capitalism. All right, it fights local corruption, gerrymandering, racial discrimination, police terror, you name it, even imperialism. So I always like to go through the ways it does this. I know most of our people from RP understand these things, but just for, newcomers or people that may see this down the road, I'll explain a few of the ways. First, the federal guaranteed living wage job for every single person who wants one. This would make the minimum wage the federal living wage without a mandate to the private sector. Either the private sector would have to beat the federal living wage, or they can't attract a labor workforce away from the federal job guarantee program. So it would revolutionize the private sector. They would have to redo their business model to value labor, or else they can't attract a labor workforce away from the job guarantee program. All right. It would also fight local corruption. It would restore democracy, fight gerrymandering. It would fight systemic racism and police terror, local corruption. Does all of this with extreme mobility. All right. If you take a substandard city like Flint that allows its police to terrorize the people, they allow their infrastructure to be neglected to the point where people are being poisoned by their water. People could simply get up and leave. They could go to a community that really does care about their people. They could do that knowing that they have a federally guaranteed living wage job waiting for them anywhere they go. And what that does to the substandard city, they lose their tax base. And with it, they lose their ability to operate. Because like we all know, at the city, at the local and state level, government really is revenue constrained. Unlike our federal government that never needs revenue or profit. Our state and local governments, they really do need tax revenues. They really do, because they can't make their own dollars like the federal government. And the other big way the federal job guarantee empowers the average person is by stopping for-profit imperialism. And it does that by, it ends the military's employer of last resort status. This would decimate the military's ability to recruit poor people all over. Because no longer would we be the precarious class. No longer would labor be so unstable and insecure that they have to go to the military and risk their lives for a stable career. All right, they could stay home and get a living wage job rebuilding their own community. And so without people to fight our unjust for-profit wars, the military would have to abandon their goals of empire. They would then have to really defend our nation's sovereignty and defend our rights against all enemies, foreign and domestic, from rogue nations to our domestic capitalist class. That would be the only way people would feel patriotic enough. Enough people would feel patriotic enough to join the military in the first place. So, the federal job guarantee, in my eyes, and pretty much anybody who knows MMT in their eyes too, the federal job guarantee is the revolutionary progressive keystone program from which all other programs will flow. It's a democratic means of production. From full employment, we have labor for single-payer health care. We have labor for green sustainable energy. We have labor for nationalized education, kindergarten through college, And this would raise everybody's standard of living. We can meet everybody's base needs in America. It's not an issue. We have tons of real resources. That's not the issue, and people need to understand this, and public debt for society and a higher standard of living is the entire point of government and dollars to begin with. Again, Article 1, Section 8 mandates Congress mint and tax to provide for the general welfare of society. That's what that means. All right? That's what that means. Government taxation creates unemployment, so it could provision society with real resources using paid employment. So, public debt for society and a higher standard of living is the entire point of government in dollars to begin with. Let's see. Yeah, I see the same thing, Crystal. So many people that I talk to, were disillusioned. That's why they get us at 18 years old, before the frontal cortex or the frontal lobe in your brain is fully developed. So you don't really think about consequences, and you don't think things through all the way. We're young men, we're just full of piss and vinegar at that age. We'll do anything. We'll jump on a grenade to save the platoon, and that they bank on that to just, they want us to just follow orders, not ask questions. They want us just smart enough to be obedient enough to listen, but not to ask questions. And, a lot of the people, even when I was in the military, they had me. I was fooled, I was right wing. Yeah, I would always repeat the right-wing talking points. I would tell people, well, if we don't fight them over there, we're going to have to fight them here. Never understanding, that's complete BS. If we're not terrorizing them over there, why would they have a reason to fight us here? People ain't going to wake up halfway around the world and just want to, travel to America to risk everything, even being killed just to kill Americans. They don't do that for nothing. It doesn't make sense. The fact is our government goes around the world and we terrorize the whole entire world with for-profit imperialism, and that radicalizes the world. So that's counterproductive to civil society. So it's not consistent with the general welfare. So it shouldn't be done. And, we do the same thing here in America. We terrorize our own people with for-profit imperialism. Really, the drug war, that's what it's about, profit. Everything, every problem in society, it all goes back to profit. Our government doesn't need to engage in for-profit imperialism. What it's doing is making money for the capitalist class. Our government doesn't need to engage in for-profit healthcare. What it's doing is making money for the capitalist class. Our government doesn't need to engage in any of these for-profit endeavors, because it makes money at will by decree. All right? That's its constitutional mandate. That's its sole purpose. And somehow we got it mixed up in our mind that government needs to get out of the way and just let the free markets work. There is no free market without the government. Only government can spend dollars into existence. Okay? We are guaranteed government for, of, and by the people. That's democratically, socially owned government for the general welfare of society. That's socialism. And it's baked into the Constitution before socialism was even a word. Capitalism only exists in the private sector. And it only exists until to the point our socially owned government allows. Our government owns the private sector completely with its power to impose tax and be the monopoly issuer of the only tax credit, dollars. Nobody even owns property in America. We all rent. We all pay tax, just like communist China, and the only free market is the black market, even the dollars in your pocket belong to the government, and they're subject to recall taxation at any time per the Constitution. All right, so government is supreme in our authority, in our society. They're the supreme authority in our society, per the Constitution. Government don't need revenues. It doesn't need profit. It makes dollars at will. So what's that mean? It means that the 1% are irrelevant. The ruling class is irrelevant. The deep state is irrelevant. The Fed conspiracies, irrelevant. We, the people, can unite at any time and collectively force our socially owned government to satisfy its constitutional mandate to the general welfare at any time, regardless. So you want to talk, the elections are rigged. They are rigged, but we still need to vote. But more importantly, we need to unite in solidarity outside of the party structure, because it doesn't matter who's in office. If we unite in solidarity, we can force any government to satisfy its constitutional mandate to the general welfare. We've done, every working class gain in history has been got like this. The ruling class never just gives us justice. We have to force the issue collectively. All right? Whether you're talking about the Vietnam War, whether you're talking about, like Steve was just talking about earlier today, the EPA, Nixon gave us the EPA. And it was because of the collective pressure put on them by our people in America. So the same with the Great Depression. The labor united in solidarity and forced the ruling class to give us the full employment policies of the New Deal. They didn't want to give that up. They had no choice. FDR told his ruling class buddies, either you give up a little bit of power and wealth today, or you give it all up tomorrow in the revolution that's sure to follow. You know what I mean? The ruling class isn't stupid. They know we're the majority. We could shut America down non-violently just by staying home. If labor puts their hands in their pockets, the capitalist class is whooped. That's why MMT is so important. It's a scientific, non-partisan description of how our economy works at the macro level, and that's it. And once you understand that, the neoliberal narrative that was designed to keep us divided is gone. We can defeat that with simple logic and common sense. You want to talk about trickle-down economics, it's easy to defeat this line of thought with simple common sense. Demand doesn't trickle down, it travels up. I always say it. And like Ellis Winningham, I first heard him say it in these terms. When we guarantee the jobs at a bottom income distribution, because they make up the largest segment of society, the more dollars they have, the more they guarantee and demand the jobs that are skilled and the educated above them. It's just simple logic. You give people at the bottom money, and they need the jobs that are skilled and educated above them. So this is how the only way you can balance a consumer-driven capitalist economy is by spending at the bottom. It's not hard to understand. Because when you spend at the bottom, people spend in the economy. They have needs immediately. And you spend at the top, and people had money all along, they just put money in their savings account. Which option do you think helps the economy better? Of course, it's spending at the bottom. Yeah, bubble up, not trickle down. So, and then it doesn't matter even if there's a D in front of their name. Trickle down is still trickle down. Voodoo economics.
Just because you target the middle income distribution doesn't mean it's bottom up. That's still trickle down. In an economic recession, the bottom income distribution is the first to get fired. In an economic uptick, the bottom income distribution is the last to be hired. So, you have to target the bottom income distribution. And you do that with a federally guaranteed living wage job for every single person that wants one. But
I'm running out of steam here, guys. Give me some more topics. What do you want to talk about? Yep. We can overcome election fraud, Rob. Absolutely. By learning our operational reality and storming the polls. Guess what? If we're all voting for one person and we're all collectively demanding with one voice, I don't care if the elections are rigged or not, we can force our socially owned government to do what we want. All right? There is no society without us. All we have to do is stay home from work one day. The working class stays home from work one day. We shut down America. It grinds to a halt. Go back to work the next day.
Son of a bitch. All right. No sound. Can you guys hear me now? Can you guys hear now? Well, I don't know. I guess there's no sound, so that's all for today, guys. Take it easy. Oh, wait a minute. All right, I guess I got sound back. Today has just been a bad day for the technical difficulties. Okay, but again, we can force, it doesn't matter if we have election riggings or not. All right? And, we can force our government to do what we want it to do. All right? If we're all saying with one voice, demanding with one voice a federal job guarantee, we can have that done. It doesn't matter who's in office because the working class can simply stay home. If the working class unites in solidarity and stays home for one day, we watch America grind to a halt. We go back to work the very next day, but having demonstrated our ability to organize and shut shit down, then we can leverage that capability into getting our demands met. All right? And even if we couldn't get, all of the working class, even if we just got the service sector, I mean, we can do some real damage to their pocketbooks in the capitalist class that the ruling class would force government to do what we wanted them to do. Government is the lever of power. All right. So it doesn't matter. We can, the ruling class, they understand without the labor, they have nothing. So we have to force their hands. They're not just going to give us justice, guys. All right, so learn our macroeconomic reality, learn our operational reality. Look up Dr. Stephanie Kelton, look up Dr. Bill Mitchell, Dr. Fidel Kaboob, look up Ellis Winningham, Steve Grumbine, follow Real Progressives, follow Deficit Owls, look up Dr. Joe Firestone, These are the people talking truth, and they don't care if you don't like it. Because we're trying to save lives. And this simple truth gives us, the ability to, go forward with our progressive agenda. It's the only way. Without MMT, there is no progressive movement. If you can't pay for your programs, if you don't know how to pay for your programs, you end up like Bernie Sanders, okay? Advocating to add pointless taxes into a single payer bill. And then with a Republican majority, or even not with a Republican majority, you're not going to be able to pass the single payer bill. The fact of the matter is, if you have the real resources to meet the demand for any program, we could always afford that program without raising taxes, without making cuts, and it'll always be non-inflationary. So, going back to Bernie, we loved his goals. We loved what he stood for. But because he never came out and explained the operational reality, his campaign called for $33 trillion in spending, and it only collected $19 trillion in taxes. Now, because we understand MMT, we understand that's fine. But because the majority of Americans do not understand that, and he still used the same neoliberal talking points and scare tactics as everybody else, he got the moniker Crazy Bernie, and it stuck because no one understood. Oh, he just wants to give everybody free stuff. How's he going to pay for it? You're going to have to raise all of our taxes, and then people are against it. And like Steve Grumbine always says, even Republicans love their kids. All right. So once people understand that they're not paying for other people's mistakes, once people understand that their tax dollars don't pay for anything, we can raise everybody's standard of living, meet everybody's base needs without a dime more in taxes. It becomes real hard to argue against, public purpose programs. Okay. So this is the main thing, that's why we say MMT is the revolution. MMT is the revolutionary vehicle we've all been waiting for. After you learn MMT, it's kind of hard to stay in the matrix. You know what I mean? They hate poor people, Allison. That's because their understanding of our operational reality is wrong. They don't understand even, once you explain to them, I used to be Republican. I used to have these same ideas. Steve used to be Republican. He used to have these same ideas, but the fact of the matter is, nobody can deny that we target unemployment. So you can't just say, "Oh, go get a job," because we make sure 5% of the working class can't find a job. So at that point, they have no option but to agree with us. All right. We're talking, you want poor people to go get a job, not to be lazy. That's what we're saying. We're saying give everybody a living wage job that wants one. Okay. Then you'll see the welfare rules shrink. You'll see them disappear. And there's not many people that would rather have a welfare check, instead of a living wage job. And if they did, they're mentally disabled anyway, and they deserve disability anyway. So, it's real simple. You give people the option of having a living wage job, and they're going to take it, and they're going to work, and you're going to see, everybody wants to have the good things in life, Let's see, Barbara. If you don't speak truth, you're useless. We need brave souls standing up for the people. Absolutely. That's the main thing, Barbara. Absolutely. I mean, and it's really disheartening, too, to see so many good progressive candidates. We just had Angelica Earl on. She signed the CFAR pledge. That's great. But we just had her on, and she was talking about not wanting to talk about MMT because, the people in her area just wouldn't get it. But you don't have to say the word MMT. You don't have to say those letters. But you do have to reflect our operational reality. And when you're talking about, single payer, or you're talking about any public purpose program, you don't have to attach taxes to that. And as a matter of fact, we shouldn't attach taxes. We need to separate the tax fight from the spending fight, because them are two separate fights. And we don't need any extra barriers to public purpose spending, because we're trying to save lives. And, when you put on these extra fights that don't even need to happen, we're not going to be able to save lives. When people think we have to tax the rich before government can spend on society, we accept pointless austerity that kills more than guns and drugs combined. When we think we have to cut defense before government can spend on society, we accept pointless austerity that kills more than more than guns and drugs combined. When we think we have to end the Fed, before government can spend on society. Again, pointless austerity that kills just like bullets. All right. So these are all, and that's why the ruling class hates this reality so much, because they know if people understood government can always satisfy its constitutional mandate to the general welfare, regardless of the markets, regardless of the exchange rate, regardless of federal revenues. We would demand they do it. We would demand the government fully fund the public purpose. There would be, no reason to ever accept pointless austerity, and that's the whole thing. So that's why we have to understand this stuff. What we got to do is spend. It's real simple. You want to boil it down to the brass tacks. We need our government to spend. We need our government to invest in society. All right. The national debt is not numbers on a scorecard or on a clock in Times Square. It's the lack of investment we make into our society. The lack of investment we made in green sustainable energy or education or healthcare. Because after all, again, the money part of the equation doesn't matter. That's infinite, always. All that matters is we have the real resources available to buy with that money. So that means we have to keep up our productive capacity. So that means we have to have top-notch education. We have to have top-notch healthcare, because healthy people are more productive. Unhealthy people are less productive. We have to, have educated people, because educated people are more productive. Uneducated people are less productive. We have to have green, sustainable energy, because if we use up our natural resources, we're not going to be very productive, are we? I mean, this is common sense stuff. And that's why it's government's job. That's why it's in the Constitution, Article 1. All right? It's the main job of government is to maintain our general welfare. All right? Maintain society. Society is government's job. All right? Government's job. When government instead works for the private purpose of individuals at the society's expense, that's fascism. That's a big part of fascism. Whenever you see a fascist government or a fascist system, you will always see suppression of labor and the empowerment of corporations and capitalists. That's a big part of fascism. So, this isn't very difficult to understand. And when you tell Republicans this logic, what I found is most of the time they even understand it. Some of the time they're just hateful assholes, and they say, I don't even care. I don't care if that's it. I still, I like it my way. Well, they're just pieces of shit. And you have that on both sides too. Because I talk to, Greens and other people that don't care that this simple logic is the reality. They would rather us not have money. They would rather us not have a government. And they don't care that means millions of people would die. They don't understand. I mean, either that or they don't understand it. But if we don't have government spending money into the economy, factories close down, economic output dries up, and millions of people will die. All right? There is no free market. It's all central planning. How government spends decides everything. It decides what gets produced, where it gets produced, how it gets produced, how it's distributed. It decides everything. So, forget this dumb capitalist free market idea, and let the free markets decide. The free market is only there because government spends dollars into existence and which coordinates all its resources. That's what makes the market to begin with. But, all right, I think that's pretty much enough. Yeah, the wage slaves. Slave wage jobs. That's it. I mean, when the capitalist class, since the 70s, both parties have teamed up to kill the full employment policies of the New Deal. All right. This is why, since the 70s, our wages have been stagnant, while corporate profits and productivity and cost of living are all sky high, record highs. All right. And it's for one simple reason. Our government has been targeting unemployment since the 70s. All right. Not only is that intentional systemic poverty, but it also gives the capitalist class a weapon to wage war on labor. That buffer stock puts downward pressure on all labor wages and working conditions. Now, if you ask your boss for a raise, they can simply say no. They have millions of unemployed people out there who will do your job cheaper than you. It puts downward pressure on all labor wages. That's class warfare. It's wage suppression. It's fascism. Yeah, Harsh couldn't join us. His internet is all messed up. He's on a boat in the Grand Cayman Islands, a lucky bastard. But so he's not able to join us though. So he's probably sitting back right now, sipping a Mai Tai or something. But that's all right. I'll be back on his program. But I think that's all for today's talk. I wanted to definitely talk about the Fed. Raising rates again, talking about our economy being so great. We have such a good economy that the Fed has to raise rates and create even more unemployment. It's insanity. We're nowhere close to full employment. At 4% unemployment, that's millions unemployed, millions more underemployed. That by itself is unconscionable. That by itself is economic terrorism. To actually try to create more unemployment and for people to actually go along with that and think that, that's okay. If our government, if our economy has to survive on the backs of its most vulnerable, the unemployed, then, our economy isn't worth saving. All right. But the fact is it's pointless. There's a better way to stabilize prices. Instead of keeping people so poor that prices stay low, the federal job guarantees a price anchor. It's an anchor for inflation. With that democratic means of production, we can increase the supply of just about any real resources we need for the general welfare of society. That's a much better way to control prices. Plus our net importer status, our trade deficit, allows us to increase our finite supply of real resources with our infinite dollars as well. So, that's why we haven't seen inflation problems for a very long time. Even after trillions and endless wars and corporate welfare and bank bailouts, we still can't hit our inflation target rate. And that's because, we're able to increase our supply of real resources with infinite dollars using our trade deficit. And having unemployment means we have a lot of slack in our economy. So, and one more point while I'm on here, I might as well talk about Japan. People always want to talk about, losing our international reserve currency status and what would happen if we lost the petrodollar, even though there's really no such thing as the petrodollar. It just describes a transaction. But anyway, you look at a place like Japan, they have no petrodollar. They don't have the international reserve currency. They don't have an imperial army dominating the world. They don't even have half of our productive capacity. And yet they're still able to have a debt to GDP ratio over 250%. And they've been doing this for over 20 years. And they still can't hit their inflation target rate. And they have much higher employment, lower unemployment rate. And they have a stronger social safety net. So if Japan can do that, we can do it. And it doesn't matter. People want to talk about losing the international reserve currencies. Well, we got it right now. and so, you know what I mean? So if Japan can do it without the international reserve currency status, why couldn't we do it with it? And if we did lose it, then I guess would be just like Japan. We could still do it. So, you know what I mean? In other countries, China does it too. These countries are schooling us on using sovereign currencies. And we have the international reserve currency status. The dollar is king. All these other places, they stabilize their currencies with dollars. And yet they're schooling us. China investing trillions of dollars in their infrastructure, into their productive capacity. And yet we're in America thinking that, we're broke as a nation. Or if we spend too much and help people too much, then they're going to lose their drive. They're going to lose their drive to survive. And they're going to become dependent. We're all dependent on government. If you have $1 in your pocket, it came from government. And then, rich people don't create the jobs. All right. They can't create permanent jobs. Rich people they can invest all they want into a company. They can make the best product in the world. But if they can't sell it, they go out of business every time. So what we really need is a balanced economy to create the sales necessary for growth. It's not complex. Only government can balance our economy. Only government can create the conditions that are necessary for growth. That's it. So once people understand these things, they're more likely to, accept our progressive agenda goals. Inflation target rate is like 2%, John. As we target inflation, we want a little bit of inflation, because it's easy to control. Inflation happens when demand outstrips supply. Too many dollars chase too few goods. So to control that, all you do is you increase your supply of real resources, or you tax extra demand, or both, or you sell bonds to extract extra demand, and so it's easy to control inflation. Deflation, though, is our problem, and it's much worse. Again, our wages have been stagnant since the 70s, while productivity is sky high. Corporate profits and cost of living are sky high, while wages are stagnant. So that's worse than inflation. We're losing purchasing power through that deflation. We're transferring a bigger percentage of GDP to the top 1%. All right, and this is well documented too. And if I can understand this as a high school dropout, any of you can understand this stuff. It's basic logic. But if that's all, anything else anybody wants to talk about, put it down. If not, I'm just going to close out. Really wanted Harsh to come on here. We would have had a much better conversation. He would have kept me talking, bringing up good topics and everything to talk about. Because I didn't have anything wrote down, so. All right, well, that's about it then for today. Thanks, guys, for tuning in. Thanks for bearing with us. Have a good day.